After a recent spat with the establishment and a consistent headbutting with the Biden administration, what we see is RFK Jr. has announced he will be running as an independent. Many people speculating that he may have been running as a libertarian, which I, as a libertarian, honestly would not have been a fan of. I like RFK Jr. a lot on a lot of things, but when it comes to a lot of stuff, he's actually still quite bad. I will go into some of those in a moment. But here's the deal. This is fascinating because this is going to be something that will both strip voters from the middle when it comes to the Democrats and from the more moderate side when it comes to the Republicans. And if Donald Trump is then persecuted endlessly, which removes him from the process of being able to be voted for, I believe that leaves Kennedy as the viable option for people to vote for as something to be someone who's challenging Joe Biden and the establishment. If that's the case, that's going to be quite fascinating. I'm not really sure at what way this is going to go, but I'm incredibly interested. It would be quite fascinating to see Donald Trump pull in someone like RFK Jr. and then have them run as his VP. That would be unbelievable. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. This is from Being Libertarian. We're going to go ahead and start this off on Twitter. What do you think about RFK Jr. running on the Libertarian Party ticket? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. flirts with the Libertarian Party. Mr. Kennedy sat down with the party's chair in July, a previously undisclosed meeting, as Democrats fret about a third-party bid. The party's chair being that of Angela McArdle. Angela McArdle is now the acting chair because the Mises Caucus ended up taking over the Libertarian Party. What happened after the Reno reset? Alrighty. Moving on, I'm realistically not a fan of RFK Jr. running under the banner of the Libertarian Party. He would have to get good on a lot of issues really fast. And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into Joshua, and he's got a couple of things where he's listing out some of the problems with RFK Jr., and this is some of the things he sees with RFK Jr. that are issues. Here's the deal. I disagree with Joshua on a lot. Like a lot. I think he's realistically closer to a progressive than a libertarian that's just really good on the free market and hates communists. But he's really spot on when he's talking about the market, and he's spot on when he talks about the issues with communism. And I'm going to give people their credit where it's due, because I'm not going to sit here and tar people and act like, well, you're not a real libertarian because you hold X, Y, or Z view and you believe in A for the purpose of B to achieve C. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to sit here and do that. That destroys the discourse, and it completely removes our capacity to have an actual conversation about how we can achieve minutia through proper discourse and then pushing it through the private sector, because libertarians actually understand that politics is not a serious metric of how to achieve proper change in society, and that the market is the best way to do so. So why would you want to ostracize every single person that disagrees with you on small issues just because of the fact that you have these minor disagreements? You should be able to come to common consensus in the end, because you understand the large problem being that of the state. Alrighty. On to Joshua's tweet, it says, as a candidate, RFK Jr. wants to stop nuclear power. That's a problem for me. I have a huge issue with that. Abandon Ukraine. I'm completely okay with dropping funding for Ukraine. I genuinely do not have an issue with this. NATO expansion is what has caused this. Joshua is someone who completely avoids the history of what has led to the context of the Ukraine-Russia fight. And what we see now, it says, pass the Green New Deal. This is an issue. RFK Jr. got it much better on climate change than he was in the years past. He understands that it's being pushed in his agenda top down by massive superstructures that are effectively even larger and more powerful than that of the world governments. Redistribute wealth. This is something I have a major issue with, because I do not believe in redistributive wealth. I have major problems with this because this is going to be another way of the government stealing from you, which will then increase your taxes. Okay. Slow pharma innovation. He doesn't want to slow pharma innovation. He wants to make sure that pharma has to go through the same regulatory process for vaccines as they do for medication, which they do not currently. They do not have to go through the same trials. Limit free speech. RFK Jr. is completely for free speech. This is absolute nonsense. This is another example of where I would say Joshua's very tunnel vision when it comes to his hatred for RFK, solely based on the fact that he is so fervent for what is going on with what is happening in Ukraine, and he believes in funding Ukraine to the nth degree, even if it means grounding that country into the absolute dirt, which is one reason why I would say Joshua is pushing for things that are anti-libertarian. So it's kind of funny seeing him talk about how other people are pushing fundamentals that would be anti-libertarian. He wants to arrest his political opponents. I've not seen anything of RFK wanting to arrest his political opponents. If I'm wrong, please tell me about that in the comment section down below. I will gladly go watch it. He wants to ban fracking, and that itself is an issue because that is a threat to energy independence. Same thing with completely stopping nuclear power. RFK is bad about many things, and he would have to get good on many, many other things. He didn't even mention his problems with the Second Amendment and how RFK Jr. is not fully pro 2A. He said he would support a bipartisan consensus on a ban of assault weapons, and that was a major dropping of the ball, and I would argue it was a tipping of the hat, which really showed that RFK Jr. still at heart is a Democrat, but he's a Democrat like his father was of the 60s and 70s, more than that of a progressive socialist of the current day and age that we see now, helming many of the political frontrunners in our landscape that we see today. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. We're going to jump into an article from Mediaite as well as something from the Post Millennial and the Daily Caller. Let's go. We're going to start off with this article from Mediaite that broke the information that made everyone privy to the fact that RFK Jr. will be running and planning an independent run for presidency. Well, here's the deal. I hate Mediaite's website. It's absolute dog shit, but we're going to have to run with it. 2024 presidential candidate RFK Jr. plans to announce he will run as independent on October 9th in Pennsylvania. Kennedy's campaign machine is now planning attack ads against the DNC in order to pave the way for his announcement in Philadelphia about running as an independent. And this is something I can't wait to see, is RFK attacking the left from the left. Because if you want to make your attacks on someone and their political ideology ever more, I would say, impactful, well, what you need to do is attack the left from the left and the right from the right. Because what happens a lot of times, it appears that you're attacking them from a far more principled standpoint. And with that, you actually have to force them to acknowledge what you're saying rather than just hand wave it away as, oh, well, you're just my ideological opposition, therefore I don't need to listen to you because what you say holds no real weight for what I believe. Alrighty, moving on. Bobby feels that the DNC is changing the rules to exclude his candidacy, so an independent run is the only way to go. He's spot on about that. Moving on to the fact of exactly how the corporate press works, and this is something that pisses me off to no end. Kennedy, a notorious anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist challenging incumbent President Joe Biden for the Democratic nomination, has been flirting with a third-party run in recent weeks. The fact that they come up with this, notorious anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist, it couldn't be Kennedy, notorious for being the son of Robert F. Kennedy and nephew to JFK. No, it couldn't be that. It couldn't be RFK, notorious for his lawsuits that he won consistently against the pharmaceutical industry. Couldn't be RFK, notable for his many, many lawsuits that he levied at people like Monsanto for things like glyphosate, winning in the end. No, couldn't be any of that. It has to be that he's a notorious anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist. And here we see the smear merchants at it once again. God, I hate this website and the way it bounces. The New York Times reported last week that he met with the chair of the Libertarian Party, raising the prospect of a departure from the party that decades ago became synonymous with his family name, that being the Democratic Party. Kennedy remains far behind Biden in the polls, yet while the Times reported Democrats worry that a third party run by Mr. Kennedy could draw votes away from Mr. Biden and help elect President Donald J. Trump, and I'm not realistically sure if that's actually the case and that's what will happen, because here's the deal. There are a lot of Republicans that like RFK. And something that Jack Posobiec tweeted, which kind of rings true to this statement, is, well, if you have two anti-establishment candidates in the race, and there are three candidates, then the establishment wins. Which that's not actually entirely the case. And let's say they actually do end up knocking Trump out and he can't end up running for president. If RFK is running independent, every single one of those Trump supporters is rushing straight to RFK. And that is still a threat to the establishment. And here's the deal. I don't know who's a bigger challenge to the establishment, being RFK or Donald Trump. But I would love to see a combination of the two, because if it ends up being Donald Trump takes on RFK Jr. as his VP, oh my goodness, would that not be an absolute powerhouse? You would end up stripping so many people that are more centrally aligned when it comes to their mentality, and they're not so deep into the progressive dogma that they would actually be swung to the side of voting for Trump just simply because RFK is his front runner as his VP. Man, that would be fascinating. Moving on, we're going to go ahead and jump into this from the Post Millennial. Breaking: RFK Jr. plans to announce independent run for president, says report. President RFK Jr. launched his campaign for the Democratic presidential nomination in April, reportedly plans to announce an independent run. According to Mediaite, Kennedy plans to announce this run on October 9th in Philadelphia. Alrighty, and as I said, he's going to be launching attack ads against the DNC and the Biden administration, which I can't wait. Bobby feels that the DNC is changing the rules, and on Saturday, the New York Times published a piece stating that Kennedy met with the Libertarian Party chair Angela McArdle in July at a Memphis conference. He emphasized that he was committed to running as a Democrat, but said that he considered himself very libertarian, McArdle said, adding that we aligned on a lot of issues, including the threat of the deep state. Yeah, absolutely, because the deep state took out his family. My perspective is the time that we're going to stay in touch in case he does run, Ms. McArdle said, and he can contact me at any time if that's the case. It would be very bad if Kennedy runs as a libertarian, said Matt Bennett, a co-founder of Third Way, a Democrat group helping coordinate efforts to stop no-label groups who are trying to run third-party tickets. Man, the fact that you want to stop people from running third-party tickets really just shows the fact of how much you don't actually care about democracy, despite the fact that you say we must save democracy. We've been very clear that third parties in close elections can be very dangerous and would almost certainly hurt the president. That would be true if a no-labels candidate such as RFK were to run. According to Real Clear Politics, a poll between September 7th and 19th, Kennedy is around 50 points behind Biden, and Biden polling at 65% and Kennedy at 14.9. How many people in the American public actually know that RFK Jr. is running for president? I would actually like to know that, because that is a major factor in this. And also, there's so many people that are just ideologically captured and will vote blue no matter who. And not just that, they'll only vote for someone that looks like they're espousing the establishment rhetoric. And it's not even because they're espousing the establishment rhetoric. It's because they've been so co-opted by the narrative that they think that it's everything that is right. Moving on, we're going to go to the Daily Caller. RFK Jr. will run for president as independent, says report. Democratic presidential candidate will run on October 9th, as we've been through. Here we see from Roger Stone, I predict RFK abandons the rigged Democratic nominating process and runs as independent. This was on September 24th. Even before this, Roger Stone could have actually already had this information, and he was just dropping a breadcrumb for people to go ahead and check this out, but who knows? And here's the deal. We're going to see multiple different things in this article covering what we've already seen in the other two articles. But what I do want to talk about is the fact of how valuable it is for someone like RFK to be a spoiler candidate against someone like Joe Biden. Because if you have someone who can steal 5% of the vote, which was the idea of what the Libertarian Party wanted to do, but if someone even like RFK could do that, then you are inadvertently tipping the scales towards Donald Trump if you are stealing more from the left, and if you are stealing more from the right, you are inadvertently tipping the scales towards that of Joe Biden. Many people on both sides will say, well, he's doing this despite the left, or he's doing this despite the right. All depends on their own ideological bend, but realistically, I think RFK Jr. is doing what he sees best to achieve his role of being president. And with the establishment being so against him, it is only going to push so many more people to be behind him. Alrighty. The fact that Kennedy has to beg the Biden administration for Secret Service protection is absolutely mind-blowing. And here we see Kennedy begged the Biden administration for Secret Service protection in September after a man impersonating a U.S. Marshal was arrested for bringing 2 loaded pistols and a spare ammunition and magazine at one of Kennedy's campaign events. The candidate's father, New York Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, were both assassinated by the CIA. Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and leave it there. Go ahead, follow RFK, give him a good old tip of your nod when it comes to how you would be paying attention to the political scene, because I would argue he's incredibly valuable, and he needs to have all of the eyes on him possible. 1, so this poor man cannot end up like his father and his uncle, and 2, because we need more eyes on anti-establishment candidates, because it will only devalue what government is in the eyes of the American people, and then make people realize that these people are nothing more than blood-soaked monsters. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Go ahead, thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Are you interested in the fact of RFK Jr. being a spoiler candidate for Donald Trump or Joe Biden? I am, because I'm an accelerationist, and I want to see at what scale we can move this up towards people not trusting the government even more. Thank you for watching. Peace out.